Welcome to Headline Hub Updates. Subscribe and press the bell icon for more updates. The South China Sea is once again the center of a dangerous geopolitical standoff, drawing the attention of the world's major powers and raising tensions across the region. On September 21, 2025, 3 Chinese warships entered the Philippines' exclusive economic zone, an unmistakable escalation that sent shockwaves through diplomatic circles and military command centers alike. This is not routine. It's a bold and provocative move by Beijing, directly challenging Philippine sovereignty and testing the resolve of international law and regional alliances. The world is watching closely as the risk of conflict grows by the hour, with live updates and breaking news dominating headlines across continents. China's sweeping 9-line claim overlaps with the maritime zones of several Southeast Asian nations, but this latest deployment of warships is unprecedented in both scale and intent. Warships, not just Coast Guard vessels, now circle Second Thomas Shoal, where a handful of Philippine Marines maintain a lonely and vulnerable outpost on the grounded BRP Sierra Madre, a symbol of Manila's determination to hold its ground. The Chinese ships are tightening a blockade, aiming to intimidate and disrupt Philippine resupply missions, increasing the risk of direct confrontation at sea. Each passing hour increases the risk of a miscalculation or accidental clash, with consequences that could ripple far beyond the region and impact global stability. This is the culmination of China's long-term strategy to dominate a vital waterway for global trade, through which trillions of dollars in goods pass every year, making the stakes even higher for the international community. How Manila and Washington respond in the coming days will set the tone for the region's future, potentially shaping alliances and security arrangements for years to come. The stakes for the Indo-Pacific have never been higher, as the world holds its breath and waits to see what happens next in these contested waters. This crisis is years in the making, rooted in a complex web of territorial disputes, shifting alliances, and rising ambitions in the South China Sea. After the 2016 Hague Tribunal rejected China's sweeping maritime claims, Beijing responded by doubling down, rapidly building militarized islands, expanding runways, and fortifying its presence across the disputed waters. China's Coast Guard and maritime militia began harassing Philippine fishermen, blocking access to key fishing grounds, and asserting control over traditional livelihoods, escalating tensions on a daily basis. These so-called gray zone tactics, aggressive but just short of open conflict, avoided outright war, yet steadily eroded Philippine control and undermined regional stability. In recent months, Manila has shifted to a strategy of transparency, openly publicizing Chinese aggression and sharing evidence with the world to rally both domestic and international support. In response, China's actions have grown even bolder, deploying lasers and water cannons against Philippine resupply missions and escalating confrontations at sea. Just last week, intelligence sources spotted a significant Chinese naval buildup in the Spratly Islands, raising alarms among regional security analysts and neighboring countries. Now, 2 Chinese destroyers and an amphibious ship have crossed deep into the Philippine exclusive economic zone, encircling the strategic Second Thomas Shoal in a show of force. This marks a grave escalation. China is now willing to use its navy, not just Coast Guard or militia, to enforce its sweeping territorial claims. The Philippines now faces a direct and immediate military threat, forcing its leaders and armed forces into a state of heightened alert. The world must now reckon with the consequences of unchecked aggression, as diplomats scramble to prevent a wider conflict and global headlines warn of a potential flashpoint. The standoff is a turning point, a moment that could define the balance of power in the region for years to come. The next moves by both sides will shape not only the future of the South China Sea, but also the stability and security of the entire Asia-Pacific region. The arrival of Chinese destroyers and an amphibious ship is a game-changer. These warships bring advanced missiles and the capability to land troops, raising fears of a direct assault on the BRP Sierra Madre. The conflict has shifted from Coast Guard standoffs to a military confrontation. The Philippine Navy is outmatched, forced to rely on diplomacy and allies. China's actions challenge freedom of navigation and the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. If unchecked, this sets a dangerous precedent for maritime disputes worldwide. Beijing is testing Washington's resolve and warning its neighbors. China is using force to create new realities on the water. The entire Indo-Pacific feels the shadow of these warships. China's preferred weapon is gray zone warfare, actions that fall short of open conflict but relentlessly pressure its neighbors. The Chinese Coast Guard and maritime militia swarm contested waters, harassing and blocking Philippine vessels. Water cannons and swarming tactics inflict damage without crossing the line into war. The maritime militia, disguised as fishing boats, overwhelm rivals and muddy the waters of accountability. But the deployment of warships signals a shift. Gray zone tactics alone aren't enough for Beijing. Manila's assertiveness and international support have forced China to escalate. This is a high-stakes gamble, one that risks direct conflict with the United States. The region stands on a knife's edge. The Philippines has responded with defiance and diplomacy. President Marcos Jr. convened his Security Council and lodged a strong protest with Beijing. The military is on high alert, determined to resupply the BRP Sierra Madre and defend its outpost. The nation is united. Political rivals and citizens alike rally behind the government. Rallies outside the Chinese embassy show the depth of public resolve. Manila knows it cannot win a direct fight, so it leans on its alliance with the United States and international support. The government is working closely with Washington, Tokyo, and Canberra to internationalize the crisis. The Philippines' stand is about more than territory. It's about upholding the principle that might does not make right. The world is watching how far Manila will go to defend its sovereignty. The next confrontation could decide the nation's fate. The United States is central to this crisis, with its influence and military presence shaping the balance of power in the region. The 1951 Mutual Defense Treaty between the U.S. and the Philippines is a cornerstone of their alliance. This historic agreement obligates both nations to come to each other's aid if either is attacked, binding their security interests together for over 70 years. In recent statements, Washington has clarified that any armed attack on Philippine forces, especially in the contested South China Sea, will trigger U.S. defense commitments under the treaty. In response to China's deployment of warships and growing assertiveness, the Pentagon has strongly condemned Beijing's actions, reaffirming its ironclad support for the Philippines and its allies in the region. To underscore its resolve, a U.S. carrier strike group, led by the USS Ronald Reagan, is moving closer to the region, a clear and unmistakable signal to China that the U.S. is prepared to defend its interests and those of its allies. The risk of a direct U.S.-China clash is real and growing. A single miscalculation or misunderstanding at sea could quickly spiral into a global crisis with far-reaching consequences. In this tense environment, the U.S. must carefully balance deterrence with restraint, relying on back-channel diplomacy and constant communication to avoid dangerous escalation and keep the peace. The current crisis has also highlighted the revitalized U.S.-Philippines alliance, as well as deepening security ties with Japan and Australia. These partnerships are being strengthened through joint military exercises and increased intelligence sharing. This united front of allies aims to send a powerful message to Beijing. Any act of aggression will not go unanswered, and the international community stands together in defense of the rules-based order. The stakes could not be higher. The credibility of U.S. commitments, the security of its allies, and the future of the regional order all hang in the balance as tensions mount. Around the world, governments, analysts, and ordinary citizens are watching closely, waiting to see what America's next move will be in this high-stakes standoff. The path forward is fraught with peril, as every decision carries the risk of escalation or miscalculation. The Indo-Pacific's security architecture is being tested as never before, and the outcome of this crisis may well shape the future of the region for decades to come. At the heart of the dispute is China's rejection of the 2016 UNCLOS tribunal ruling. The tribunal found no legal basis for China's 9-dash line and affirmed the Philippines' rights. By sending warships, China is defying not just Manila, but the entire international legal order. If China prevails, it sets a precedent for powerful states to ignore global rules. The Philippines champions a law-based approach, building coalitions to pressure Beijing. Yet, the international response is divided. Some nations fear angering China. This lack of unity has allowed Beijing to act with impunity. The world now faces a stark choice: defend the rule of law or watch it erode. Southeast Asia is on edge. ASEAN members like Vietnam, Malaysia, and Brunei see the Philippines' plight as a warning for their own disputes with China. ASEAN's consensus model has left it divided and largely ineffective. China exploits this, using economic leverage to block strong responses. Still, individual states are modernizing their militaries and deepening security ties with the US, Japan, and Australia. The region is quietly rearming in response to China's assertiveness. The current crisis could force ASEAN to take a stronger, unified stand. The bloc's credibility as a security actor is at stake. How ASEAN responds may shape the region's future balance of power. The immediate priority is de-escalation. Accidents or miscalculations could spark war. Military hotlines and clear communication are essential to prevent disaster. Diplomacy must be given a chance. Chinese warships should withdraw, and all sides must avoid provocations. The Philippines and its allies must strengthen deterrence, joint patrols, defense investments, and public commitments to security. The goal: convince Beijing that coercion will only lead to isolation. A long-term solution requires a return to a rules-based order and a binding code of conduct for the South China Sea. The international community must unite behind the 2016 ruling and uphold UNCLOS. The crisis is a test of whether the world can manage China's rise within established rules. The choices made now will shape the regional and global order for decades. With resolve and careful diplomacy, a peaceful path remains possible.